KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego's Art Power, presenting cellist Joshua Roman, performing from his album Immunity, alongside music by J.S. Bach and more. Sunday, June 22nd at UC San Diego's Epstein Family Amphitheater. Reserve your tickets at artpower.ucsd.edu.
Welcome to KPBS Roundtable. I'm Matt Hoffman. This year's Comic-Con might look a little bit different. There's an ongoing writer's strike, and it has several major studios staying away this year.
So while I think some people are going to be disappointed that Marvel's not there or some big celebrities are not there, I don't think this is a sign that the studios are just going to start passing on Comic-Con every year.
And this year's Padres season came with some very high expectations. But so far, the team has not really reached the heights that many fans expected.
I think what we've seen so far, number one, is baseball is a complicated, tricky sport, and that the best teams on paper don't always win the most games.
Don't go anywhere. Roundtable is coming up next. First, the news. You're listening to KPBS Roundtable. I'm Matt Hoffman. In less than 2 weeks, Comic-Con returns to San Diego. It kicks off with its preview day on July 19th, and then it continues through the 23rd. The annual comic book and pop culture event, it's really become a cultural phenomenon that happens each July. It brings with it thousands of fans, A-list stars, and of course, comic book creators to downtown San Diego each summer. But this year, the con is likely to look a little bit different. Several major movie studios have decided to sit out this year's edition. It has some wondering what it could mean for Comic-Con's future. Here to help us navigate what's been happening is Philip Molnar. He's the senior business reporter with the San Diego Union Tribune. And KPBS's Beth Accomando is here with us. She's our arts reporter and really our resident expert on Comic-Con, being a longtime attendee. I want to welcome you both here to Roundtable. Phil, first question goes to you. You know, from your reporting, it sounds like Comic-Con is going to look a little bit different this year. What's the latest there?
Yeah, so there are a lot of studios that say they're not going. I mean, we've sort of had this before in 2018. Marvel and HBO said they weren't going, and it was like a sort of a crisis back then where people are, they're asking me to be on radio programs and all sorts of things to talk about that. This year is a little different. It's not just two studios. It's like the really big ones that have been making a splash the past few years. Marvel Studios is not going to be there. That's the biggest one. But you also have Netflix, and now Warner Brothers own DC, Sony, and a lot of the other big studios that you might not really know what movie that studio is from, they're staying away. So it's a lot, actually, compared to previous years where some people might have sat out. So we're still waiting. It looks like Prime Video, which has made a big showing the past couple of years. Just today we got the schedule, and it looks like they're going to be there. Paramount Pictures is going to be there with the new movie, but it definitely is going to look different than the last few in-person years.
And we'll definitely dive into that a little bit. But Beth, the movies and the studios, they've become a growing part of Comic-Con, especially over more recent years. What do you make about some concerns that people might have about certain studios maybe not going?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm probably a geeky fan first and a reporter second. So as someone who's been attending the Comic-Con since the 70s, like the studio presence has never been a big deal for me. I mean, it's a treat and it's something that I enjoy when I can get in for those, but it's not the thing like that I go to Comic-Con for. So while I think some people are going to be disappointed that Marvel's not there or some big celebrities are not there, I don't think this is a sign that the studios are just going to start passing on Comic-Con every year. I mean, we do have a unique situation this year with the strikes. So, I'm just not sure. And on a certain level, maybe Warner Brothers is relieved that they don't have to be here and talk about The Flash. So maybe they're also taking the opportunity to not show up for other reasons besides just the strike. But, I think to say that the studios are not having a presence is also a little bit misleading, because although DC and Marvel, in terms of the studios, are not present, DC and Marvel do have a presence at the convention. They're both going to be on the exhibit floor. DC is going to be screening some of their animated features. Both of them have panels that are going to be there. They're just not in Hall H. And, it's kind of refreshing to see DC and Marvel focus back on comic books instead of just the big feature films they have. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, for some people, it's going to look very different. For others like me, it's like, yeah, this year there's not going to be a lot in Hall H.
Yeah, and just to echo what Beth was saying, yeah, I mean, I've been going to comic conventions most of my life. Back then, it was I used to go to the Motor City Comic Con every year, and then a few in Chicago, and then I used to go to New York Comic Con a lot. And back then, it wasn't all about those studios being there, And it was funny because this summer I got to go to San Diego's other smaller convention. It's called Rocket Con, which was in Mission Valley, and it was like 5,000 people or something, but there was no Hollywood presence, and it just felt kind of good to be there and to make these connections with people and kind of go around and do that. So it was pretty interesting. And also, yeah, what Beth was saying too, we got the exhibit hall floor plan this year, and I was like, really, it's going to look different with like different studios not going to Hall H. But it looked so similar to last year that I was nervous. I was just like had uploaded last year's exhibit plan because Marvel's got a gigantic presence there. DC's there. Star Wars has its usual big, like 2-column area going on. So where these studios, I probably could have said that first, they might not be in Hall H in that big 6,500 room, area. They are going to be at the studio or be at the convention in different ways.
And Beth, you mentioned the writers' strike there, and an actors' strike is also a real possibility. That's SAG-AFTRA, that the union that represents actors. They extended that deadline to next week for the potential strike. And Beth, you had a chance to speak with Comic-Con spokesperson David Glanzer, and here's what he had to tell you about the situation.
I think there's a mistaken belief that, it's almost as if studios and entities are boycotting the show. The reality is, there's a strike with at least one union, a potential pending strike for another, and that's really kind of turned the tables around a bit.
So, guys, it sounds like that the strike is kind of the reason why this isn't happening. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not like the studios are saying Comic-Con isn't worth attending. They've got a lot, it costs them a lot of money to come, to pay for celebrities to come down, to house them, to put together these panels. So I just think it was too risky for them with the writer's strike in progress, a potential actor's strike looming on the horizon, to gamble on trying to put something together for a big panel in Hall H.
Yeah, and I think the extension as well, the extension to July 12th further cemented that the actors probably won't be there, because I spoke with an entertainment attorney last week, and one of the things is, even if the actors somehow by July 12th come to an agreement, it still takes 3 to 4 weeks to ratify a contract. So chances are they would not be able to go to Comic-Con even if everything works out and they get an agreement by July 12th. Which a lot of industry sources are saying that's probably not going to happen. So I think once that became clear, it was like, oh, okay, we're not going to spend thousands or who knows, maybe $1 million to bring some big Hall H panel with all of our actors and all the bells and whistles.
Coming up on Roundtable, more on this year's Comic-Con and what you can expect even if you don't have a ticket. You're listening to KPBS Roundtable. We're talking about Comic-Con. Our guests are KPBS's arts reporter Beth Accomando and Phil Molnar from the San Diego Union-Tribune. And so, Beth, do we know what studios are attending this year? And do you have any insight if they're going to try to, take this year to capitalize on some guys not being there?
Well, I'm sure, some of the studios that are coming are going to be happy that maybe people are filling up their panel instead of Marvel's, full cast of Avengers or something. The panels just started to roll out on the Comic-Con website. I haven't had a chance to go through all of it, but I believe Paramount is going to be there. And like I said, DC is going to be showing some of their animated films, which honestly, some of the DC animated stuff is the best stuff that they're doing. And they're going to be premiering, I think, a couple of films there. I think only one is actually related to Justice League. But Lionsgate is going to be there with some of their TV shows. I'm, of course, interested in the Continental because that's in the John Wick universe. So, I mean, I think it remains to be seen. I'm sure there's not going to be as much of a huge line outside of Hall H camping out. As far as I know, I think only the Thursday panels, Wednesday, Thursday, are up so far. But it doesn't look like there's a heavy load of stuff going on in Hall H at this point. I think, Paramount, I think, has the Mutant Ninja Turtles film. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a little different. Some people are worried that because there's not going to be the big line at Hall H, there's going to be more people on the floor, which is a possibility. So, you know, it is going to be a little different, but there's still going to be a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I forgot how many hundreds of hours of programming there are, but Hall H is just a fraction of what that is. And, you know, I'm hoping people may take this opportunity to say, I'll try something different. I know I've interviewed people who said, like, yeah, I got turned away at Hall H and I was really depressed. And I walked by a panel room and I went in for this panel on the Scott Pilgrim comic and I fell in love with it. And I never would have known about it, you know, if I had gone to the Hall H show. If you're going to Comic-Con with a very narrow focus of what you want to do, and that's to see a big Hollywood panel, then yes, you're probably going to be disappointed. But there's just so much going on. I mean, I kind of look at it as a relief to like be able to go and not have to spend time waiting in line and maybe get to more panels.
And Phil, is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I will add, you know, definitely as a Comic-Con attendee, someone that's been a lot of years, I really echo what Beth is saying. But from a business perspective for our tourism industry, where we spend millions of dollars each year to promote San Diego, one of the things they always love about Comic-Con is how much free media or earned media you get. You get journalists from all over the nation, international journalists too, coming to San Diego, reporting, oh, this happened there, this happened there. So while the user experience here at Comic-Con, it might be hard to tell there's something going on, you know, all that kind of stuff from that perspective. At least there is some concern from that tourism industry where maybe if there isn't, you know, Marvel, DC, all these other ones, you're not going to get as much international press or attention here in San Diego. So there is, you know, a negative in that sense from that perspective, you know, because they're always trying. You know, I had a story a couple of weeks ago about this World Design Capital thing that's happening next year. The city's giving $3 million for the event. It's kind of controversial. I mean, the whole purpose behind the city's plan there and the idea is that you're going to get a lot of media attention for this. But Comic-Con is like our biggest possible thing. So if that's diminished a little bit, I mean, is it going to make less people come to San Diego? No, I don't think so. But it's not all roses, you know, basically. But from a financial perspective too, you know, I talked to the hotel manager of the Manchester Grand Hyatt. That's our biggest hotel in all of San Diego County with 1,628 rooms, right? So as of right now, he's had no cancellation. So people it's not that they're not coming, but maybe the spotlight on San Diego is going to be a little diminished this year.
And I think tickets are non-refundable to this point too, right?
I mean, nobody's really asking for refunds. Nobody's canceling. And I mean, part of it too is if you do refund your ticket, I think there was a period in which you could, you know, you kind of lose your spot in the ability to get tickets for the following year. And the tickets are so hard to get that, you know, if let's say there's 6,000 people who only go for Hall H and they decide not to go next year, I'm sure there's 6,000 people waiting in line somewhere who'll, you know, want a ticket. And, you know, just to add on to that notion of the economics here, you know, I used to shoot video for Comic-Con back in the 90s, and they wanted me to get video of people like coming out of hotels and eating at restaurants because back then the city felt there was no economic benefit to having Comic-Con there. They said things like, oh, people who go to Comic-Con sleep on their friends' floors and eat at McDonald's. So, like, why do we want these people here? And, you know, I feel this concern over the lack of studio presence and the lack of Hollywood here is really more about how Comic-Con is perceived from the outside, more so than from the inside. And, you know, it feels more like a concern that the city might lose money in terms of, are there going to be less activations? Are there going to be fewer places, you know, being taken over by studios or companies? in the gas lamp area. I don't feel like it's a concern about, is the attendee experience going to be better? It really feels like this concern over, if there's less media coverage, then San Diego gets less of the spotlight. But I'm not sure Comic-Con is worried that there might be less media coverage of them. Maybe it means more people get in next year. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's more like a tourism perspective as far as those people getting nervous and the people that look at that industry and stuff. But I haven't seen any sign yet that the gas lamp won't be jammed up with events. As far as I know, I'm still waiting to hear about a lot of them, but some of the fun ones, I've heard so far, Adult Swim is going to have a large installation outside. There's going to be a Sonic the Hedgehog pop-up restaurant, which I'm really excited about. Jurassic Park is going to have this 30th year anniversary thing where you remember the scene where you can sit on the guy sitting on a toilet and the T-Rex eats him in the first movie. So they've remade that. So you can sit on the toilet as a, T-Rex comes at you. And of course, Comic-Con Museum's going to be doing a lot as well. So yeah, outside, it doesn't seem like any different. I know there's already at least one wrap I've seen downtown. And next week, I plan on walking around and figuring out what we've got. So on the outside, it doesn't look much different. And it looks like the studio spending is just about the same on the exhibit floor, as far as I could tell.
The other thing about the activations outside is they don't require writers or celebrities to be there. It's just the studios promoting their own stuff. And a lot of that, a lot of those activations have to be kind of put in place further in advance. So, the writer's strike or an actor strike may not have impacted the fact that, we're not going to have a big panel, but we're still going ahead with our outdoor activation because we can.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about too is like in 2018 when Marvel and HBO didn't go, there was at the time there's a lot of competing festivals out there. Like Disney has its own thing called D23, Star Wars has its own thing called Star Wars Celebration. At the time, DC was doing its own thing, like this DC fan zone. So there was this thought in 2018, well, hey, maybe Comic-Con's going away a little bit because these two studios aren't there. What's going on? And it just lets you, Marvel Studios went all out last year. They had one of the craziest panels. I got in there luckily, and it was one of the most amazing panels I've ever been at. The actors, they had somebody come out in costume, all this stuff going on. And then HBO that wasn't there that same year when we were concerned that Comic-Con was finished. Last year, HBO built a castle downtown for their latest Game of Thrones show. So, there is evidence in the past of things slowing down at Comic-Con and then picking back up as things go. One thing I'm kind of surprised about, anyways, even with the studios that have decided not to go, is a lot of at least one excuse given for why Hollywood blockbusters haven't done as well. There's been a few bombs, this summer, The Flash, Indiana Jones, the new Pixar movie Elemental. And one of the concerns, is that all those writers and actors weren't able to go on talk shows to promote their films. And that's one of the excuses for why the box office is doing as well. So I must say, I am still, even with everything going on, everything we've said, surprised that more studios didn't try to say, hey, you know what? With everything going on, even with the actors, we got to take this shot. We got to take over Hall H, even if it means all we can bring out there is like the catering service from the show or something, because one that I've noticed is Prime Video. So this is what I really found weird today is, so the schedules came out and the biggest ones that are going to be there so far, it seems like Prime Video. So not only did Prime say that they're going to have their cast of the Wheel of Time, which is like a fantasy epic long book series. They said the cast is going to be there. And I got an email seeing if I had availability to interview any of the actors. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but it definitely seems from the look of it that Prime is like, okay, if all these studios are going to stay away, this is our shot. So,
and I think it's great for people to hear that there are still going to be those activations because not all San Diegans, in fact, not even majority of them have tickets to Comic-Con. So it's great to hear that people can still go down there. And, they used to have that big Fox Ferris wheel and all that stuff down there. A lot of fun for people. And Beth, as we've been discussing here, movies and their studios, they're clearly just one piece of Comic-Con. What are you excited for this year?
Well, I tend to go without a really concrete plan a lot of times and just let things happen because I love to shop there. I have to confess, there are booths that I always want to go to. I collect Godzilla stuff, so Anime Link is top of my list. I love Troma Studios, which is not a big Hollywood studio. They are the outsider. So, I look forward to things like that and to meeting my friends and to, artists and stuff that I've come to know over the years. Artist Alley is something that I love walking through because I always find cool and amazing stuff, and same thing with small press. So I like to go for kind of the things that I'm not sure are going to happen, and just to experience stuff there because I'm a fan of pop culture. And I mean, there's stuff I like too. I love the droid builders. They always have the best panel. That's just a ton of fun. And the Legal Geeks are another one that have always had like entertaining stuff. So there's, people that I love to see every year doing panels. And then there's just such a diverse array of stuff out there that you can go to on panels. I mean, there's Holocaust survivors who are involved in graphic novels. There's how-to panels on, how to draw. And probably the biggest secret at Comic-Con is their film festival. I think that's a fabulous thing. Some of the films are great. And, it's also a great place to go to just chill out for a little bit. It doesn't tend to be crowded. Nice, cool, air-conditioned theater. You get to watch movies about pop culture. And it's great.
And we're only just beginning to learn the schedule. Phil, quickly, is there anything that popping up on the radar for you that you're sort of excited about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the biggest things is I used to be part of a group when I went to New York University called the Comic Book League. We were a club at the university, and all those people that I was in that club with have all gone out and had their careers. And I've got a friend that's a comic book artist and writer. I've got a friend that's a comic book journalist. And I love the chance for all of us just to get together again. And you don't really need any of that with a panel or anything like that. But I must say, my favorite part of Comic-Con the past few years, maybe because I'm getting older or maybe because those crowds kind of wear me out, is all the installations outside. I don't know. I just have fun with every single one. I try to sign up for as many as I can. And whenever I do a story just about everything that's going on outside and how to get in, it tends to be my most popular story of the year. It doesn't matter what happened at Hall H. It doesn't matter any of this that we're talking about, the actor strike. My story about what's going on outside and how to get into all of it, I can pretty much guarantee it to be my most popular story.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Now, not to turn the mood too much, but, San Diego has been Comic-Con's home since it began. And we know that they do some events in other cities, but nothing like they do here in San Diego. And there's been a lot of rumors over the years that Comic-Con may leave America's finest city. And Beth, you actually spoke with Comic-Con about these rumors. And again, here's David Glanzer with what they had to say.
We would love to stay in San Diego, but if we hear from our attendees who say that they may pass on the show because, certain aspects may be too challenging or too difficult, we'll have to listen to them.
What does that mean? I mean, that doesn't sound too assuring for people. I think you've mentioned before that they've said that they never really wanted to leave, but what do you make about what he said there?
Well, I still think they don't want to leave. I mean, they rely on thousands of volunteers that come here from San Diego. The show, evolved here. Most of the people who work on the show live here in San Diego, but they do face some challenges. They're running out of space. They're using practically all the space they can from the nearby hotels. And this year, the cost of hotels is just really sky high. And for a lot of just your average attendee, it's hard to pay $300, $400, $500 a night for a hotel. So again, I don't think they want to leave. Their contract is good through 2025. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is part of a negotiation too, where, if we say we have the potential of leaving, they have looked at other venues to go to, and it's hard to find another space that's that big and that they can move to. I mean, they do WonderCon up in Anaheim, which is kind of like what Comic-Con was maybe, like in the early 2000s or something. And it's a big deal. They have to move their offices up there and they have to, recruit volunteers from that area or, get people from here. So I don't think it's something they want to do, but I'm sure it's something they will say they will do at this point to try and negotiate for better terms. And, some of this is negotiating for better terms for their attendees. They don't make money off of the hotels. they're not getting a profit from that. But it is tough for people to attend from out of town.
All right, now quickly before we go, let's get some final thoughts. Comic-Con is finally almost here. What are you guys going to be watching for in the couple weeks ahead?
Just trying to survive all the stress. I mean, I run a booth. I'm also going to be doing coverage, for KPBS. And I want to go to panels, and I want to shop, and I want to hang out with my friends. So, it's just trying to manage time. I would like to go to a panel that tells me how to stop time and control it so that I can manage it better, but not sure that's going to happen.
And Phil, you have the final word.
Yes, well, I am doing a meditation retreat at the Deer Park Monastery in Escondido, like the 4 days before Comic-Con. So I'm hoping to be as calm as humanly possible coming into the event and not lose my mind. So that's my thought right there.
Very cool. Well, it's coming up. A lot of people looking forward to it, and especially those activations, hearing those are still going to be there. Beth Accomando is KPBS's arts reporter, and Philip Molnar is senior business reporter with the San Diego Union Tribune. Great to have you both here on Roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are you excited for this year's Comic-Con? You can email us at roundtable@kpbs.org or give us a call, 619-452-0228. You can leave us a voicemail there, but if you do, be sure to leave your name and what city you're calling from, as we might use it in a future show. Coming up, the San Diego Padres had some very high expectations coming into this season, but at the midpoint, the team has lost more games than they've won.
If they can start to flip that, play some inspired baseball, I think you see a team that could, again, climb the standings and get back into the position that we expected them to be in the beginning of the season.
That discussion coming up just after the break. You're listening to KPBS Roundtable. I'm Matt Hoffman. We're just over halfway through what's been called the most anticipated baseball season in San Diego history. But so far, the Padres, they haven't quite lived up to the hype. The team sits fourth place in their division, and that's out of 5 teams. Not really where Padre fans expected them to be. They own baseball's third highest payroll, and San Diegans have bought in this year in a major way. The team is on pace to see a record number of fans at Petco Park this year. Joining us to discuss what's going on with the San Diego Padres at the halfway point are Ryan Finley. He's the sports editor with the San Diego Union Tribune, and Darnay Tripp is here with us. He's a sports anchor with NBC7 San Diego. All right, Ryan, we had you on around the time that spring training started. If I had told you then that the Padres would be near the bottom of their division and have a losing record at the All-Star break, what would you have told me?
I would have asked you how many of their best players had gotten hurt. This is a team that on paper, when the season started, was expected to be among the best in baseball. And just so far, they just haven't played like it. It starts with their big 4, right? That's Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Xander Bogaerts, and Fernando Tatis Jr. They've all been good in stretches, but they're not good at the same time. And I think that what we're seeing sort of with their disappointing season so far, it's situational hitting's been bad. There's been no clutch hitting either. I think they've actually been pitching well, though their bullpen's been a little bit of a problem lately. It just comes down to their best players aren't playing like their best players. And I think that, baseball is a sport that you usually, are what the back of your baseball card says you are. I think that there's some reason to believe that their big 4 will sort of return to form as the season goes on, but it's certainly pretty concerning early on. I mean, Peter Seidler spent a lot of his hard-earned money signing these 4 superstars to try to win a World Series and bring a championship to San Diego. And so far, really with the exception of Fernando Tatis Jr., I think that they're all really disappointing. And that's something that has to improve if the Padres are going to make a run here in the second half of the season.
And Peter Seidler, of course, is the Padres' majority owner. Darnay, what about you? Your thoughts on the Padres, where they're at now versus, at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan hit on all the important notes, and he mentioned the back of the baseball card. We use that to kind of gauge our expectations for a season. That's what we have to go off of, and just guys' track record from one season to the next. And, it can be a little bit different when new guys come to town. Juan Soto got out to he wasn't playing to the Juan Soto level when he got to San Diego. Certainly had some moments, last year into the postseason, but a slow start for him. Xander Bogaerts was, everything you hoped he would be the first month of the season. Then he injures his wrist. We kind of learned that that's been a recurring issue for him. And you saw his performance slide a little bit. I think, they've each had their moments. Obviously, Tatis missed the first 20 games of the season, but it's like you haven't been able to kind of get everybody pulling in the same direction at the right time. And there's been glimpses of just how dangerous this team has been. And we saw it, during that 3-game series against the Angels. First time they swept a 3-game series. And so they appear to be moving the right direction. Jake Cronenworth is another guy that's been, far below the level we've come to expect from him from his first 3 seasons with the Padres that included 2 all-star appearances. And so I think, look, you can get into the weeds of the numbers. You can find a whole bunch of different stuff if you scan the baseball references and fan graphs and baseball savants. But at the end of the day, it's guys not playing up to their potential, and it's the star players not playing up to the potential. And that's putting more pressure on the Austin Knowles of the world and the Trent Grishams of the world. But again, you went into this season with optimism and hope because of Machado, because of Bogarts, Tatis, Soto, and Cronenworth. And by and large, those guys haven't played up to expectations. And I think that's why you've seen a team that's underachieved to this point.
Well, and Darnay, you kind of hit on it right there, and either of you feel free to jump in here. Why were the expectations so high this season? And was that justified for fans seeing in the offseason, ownership going out there and committing hundreds of millions of dollars? Was it fair to have these high expectations?
I think so. And, it wasn't just people in San Diego. I mean, I remember an ESPN piece that had them posting the highest projected win total outside of, say, the Mets. And the Mets are another team that's had a completely miserable first half of the season. Baseball is just a funny sport that way. You look at, again, the fan graphs of the world, all the projections, they had them among the best teams in all of baseball and certainly the National League. When you have a postseason run the way they did, when everything kind of came together and you add a Xander Bogaerts, and you kind of strengthen, you add a Michael Wacha, these guys, there's reason to feel good about what this team had coming in. The Dodgers, they lost some pieces. And so you have this great postseason where they beat the Dodgers. They're a couple steps away from a World Series. And then you add a talent like Xander Bogaerts. How could you not go into the year expecting to at least match what they did last season? But again, baseball can be a strange sport. It can be difficult to figure out, what is the source of a team's ills, and that's been the case for this team. But look, you can go in hindsight as much as you can, but I don't think we were necessarily wrong in expecting this team to perform at a high level going into this year.
Well, guys, it has been a historic season for the Padres in other ways, and I'm talking about record fan attendance. 1.8 million people have been to Petco Park this year, and that's a record 34 sellouts. I mean, Ryan, kind of simple question. Why are so many fans turning out to the ballpark this year?
I think that it's a little bit of a complicated answer. I think some of it is that the fans bought the tickets before the season started, right? And you're looking at, hey, when can we fit in a game? And, they had to cap season ticket sales so that more of the quote unquote average fans could go to games, right? I think that a lot of it is that. A lot of it is that these tickets were bought in March and April when the expectations were still very high. I think some of it too is that your average fan thinks that this is going to be a team that turns it around. We saw some of that against the Angels earlier this week. The Angels were a team, obviously, Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout broke his wrist, but, certainly a talented team. The Padres came in and took it to them. Part of it's that. Part of it is San Diego's proven it can be a good baseball town when it likes the product on the field. And while the results haven't been there, certainly this team full of superstars seems to have captured San Diego's imagination, even though they really haven't performed so well this year. And thirdly, and you guys know this, San Diego's a tourist town, and Petco's a great place to watch a ball game. A lot of that is just the steady drumbeat of out-of-towners that visit San Diego year in and year out. One of the frustrating parts to me, in my former life, I was just a fan of this team. And it was frustrating for years. They weren't putting a very good product on the field. And I always suspected that it was because their attendance was always pretty good, simply because Petco was a great place to see the game and San Diego is such a popular tourist destination. It's nice to see Peter Seidler and Padres ownership step up and spend the money to put a team on the field that can help justify some of these sellouts. And I would expect to see more and more sellouts as the season goes on, even if this team continues to struggle. there is a projection already that they're going to smash every attendance record they've ever had.
Darnay, we've talked about the ups and downs with this team this season. They can go out and win, score 12 runs and then score no runs the next day. How have fans taken this up and down season? Like, have we seen frustration coming out? Has there been any booing at Petco Park? Or what are you sort of seeing there?
They've taken it about as well as you'd expect them to take it, which hasn't been great, and, rightly so. And unfortunately, this isn't new. I mean, 2021, they had an epic collapse, a team that had real postseason aspirations. And you even go back to last year. I think there were some lingering fears because of what happened to 2021, where they were in mid-September before they turned it on. And even points throughout the summer where they just didn't look like they were like the team we all expected them to be. And so there was a lot of rumbling and certainly booing. I mean, we've definitely heard that at Petco Park. Because this is a team with massive expectations, a massive payroll, lots of guys that have landed huge contracts, if not this past offseason, then in recent years, that just haven't played up to the standard we've expected. And so fans have let them hear it. But I think worse than that, they've just kind of had to trudge through it. And they've had to suffer through these disappointing games and disappointing series against teams that they should be beating, and watching this team that, even at points just hasn't looked like they haven't looked very inspired. You know what I mean? They haven't looked like a team that's had a whole lot of will. I mean, so often you've seen them go down early and you're like, it's a wrap. I mean, this team hasn't shown the gumption to kind of fight their way back. We've seen a bit more of that lately, which has been encouraging, but I think it's been really disheartening. And to go into a season with these expectations, for it to just not be fun, consistently fun to this point in the year, I think is a drag. And so I think fans have every right to be disappointed with the product they've seen. But again, as you've mentioned, to their credit, they continue to show up. So good on them.
And, recently we heard from the man at the top of all this. We're talking about Peter Seidler, the owner of the Padres. Ryan, the UT had sort of an exclusive interview with him. What is he saying about what's happening right now?
He's saying, in short, he's saying all the right things. I think the things that you would expect if you were a fan from the owner. Kevin Acee watched part of a game over the weekend in Cincinnati with Seidler and, wrote, I think, very eloquently about, Seidler was making some salient point and then somebody hit a home run. And Seidler, stopped what he was saying and stood and cheered and he is a fan, I think, at heart. I think that he's also an optimist at heart. And I think he believes that there's no way this stretch of poor play can go on for the rest of the season, that their bad luck can't last forever. And that, he keeps it in perspective in a way that I think I like, but I'm sure some fans don't like. He said something like, the real problems. He gets angry when somebody mistreats a homeless person downtown. He doesn't get angry when the Padres disappoint on the baseball field. I think that that's the kind of big picture stuff that you don't necessarily see from owners all the time. Let's compare him to Steve Cohen, who's the owner of the New York Mets, right? And the Mets are struggling just like the Padres are. Mets have spent much more money than the Padres have, and they're worse right now than the Padres are. But, Steve Cohen, kind of had a press conference last week and basically said, hey, if stuff doesn't start improving, we're going to have to start really worrying about making some changes. Seidler, it does not appear, is prepared to make those drastic statements. He would not necessarily guarantee Bob Melvin's job through the end of the year when he talked to Kevin Acee, but I don't think that there's any belief out there that Bob Melvin's job is in trouble as it stands today. I think that Peter Seidler's supporting AJ Preller like he always has, and that I still think that the Padres are more likely to add at the trade deadline than sell if they can just show some signs of life at some point here in the next 2 weeks. And, I think it starts with the series that they have this weekend, and then you head into the All-Star break, come back, try to get hot. I mean, they're not all that far away from being a playoff contender again. You just got to turn, a 3-game winning streak into a 7-game winning streak, and you're right back in it. And so I think that's the way Peter Seidler looks at it. He looks at it as if the Padres' luck has to turn eventually. And when it does, he wants to add to this team and try to make that playoff push. At some point, they're all in, guys. Who cares if they add? I mean, who cares if they need to add another $10 million in payroll at the deadline, right? This is a team that has made it clear that they have championship expectations. And I think that they're ready to add if they can just, again, get back in the thick of this playoff race.
And you mentioned Bob Melvin there. He's the San Diego Padres manager. And guys, a lot of fans will remember last season. Darnay sort of hit on it earlier. A historic run for the team. I mean, just even people that weren't Padre fans, if you were out at a bar during any of those playoff games, I mean, it was completely packed and people are screaming and yelling. And there's blue and gold and purple, or not purple, brown everywhere. How do the Padres get back there? How do they get to the playoffs? I remember, Ryan, one time you said it's just about getting to the dance. It doesn't really matter, how you get there. But Darnay, how do they kind of get back there?
Well, I think the Angels series was a pretty good example. If you can copy paste that a few times, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And what you saw was Xander Bogaerts play like Xander Bogaerts. You saw Jake Cronenworth play like an all-star. We've seen Manny Machado for close to a month now put up Manny Machado-esque numbers. And you had quiet series from Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis Jr. for the most part. It's not like they have to have every guy going each and every single game. That's just not how it's going to go. But if collectively as a group, you have some of those big names performing at their level, as Ryan said, if you're better in a situational kind of basis, which they had been, those first two games, runners of scoring position, I mean, they were delivering in a way that we haven't really seen them, throughout the course of the season do. And so the starting pitching for the most part has been really good. The bullpen's taken a step back, but for the most part, they've been really good. It's all there. I think it's just kind of getting it going at the same time. And Juan Soto looking like Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr., all those guys, if they perform up to expectations, I think it could happen pretty quickly. The other thing, too, is how many teams ahead of them in the wild card standings are you really sold on? The Marlins, they got the top wild card spot. They got a negative run differential and have been lights out of 1-run games. Is that sustainable? You've got opportunities head to head against the Diamondbacks, against the Giants. How convincing are the Pirates and the Reds, some of these teams that they just saw? They lost those series to, but those teams certainly seem gettable. They just hopped the Cubs and some of these other teams with the 3-game win streak that they had against the Angels. And so, I don't think it's necessarily going to take a miraculous effort. I think if you just start to play close to your potential and start to reach your ceiling, I think they can kind of turn this thing around quicker than maybe you'd think for a team that just a few days ago was, 8.5 games back of a wild card spot.
I agree. To use a poker term here too, guys, I think, how many teams in the National League are pot committed? How many teams in the National League are buyers? I don't think that there's that many. And really, that's all you have to do. Baseball is one of those things, right? It's a long season. Good players generally, finish about where they finished the year before, barring major injuries. The Padres, I think, if they can just get to the point, to the deadline where they can be buyers, they may be one of a small list of buyers in the National League. I'm not sure a whole lot of teams are going to go out there trying to take on payroll, trying to add more talent to their teams. Not that other teams aren't trying, they are, but the Padres have proven that they're willing to spend money. And I think that if money is the only thing keeping Peter Seidler and A.J. Preller from acquiring another impact player, that's money that Peter Seidler's happy to spend.
All right, now let's get some final thoughts as we wrap up here. We have a trade deadline coming up. We have an all-star break coming up. There's still quite a bit of baseball left, even though we are past the halfway point. What are your guys' final thoughts? What are you guys going to be watching for as we head down the stretch and kind of get near to October here?
Yeah, I'm going to be watching Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado. I'm going to be watching the left side of the Padres infield. To me, these are two guys who have proven over the years that they're two of the best in baseball at what they do. Neither player has played up to expectations. Neither player is playing up to the stats on the back of his baseball card so far this season. Manny Machado is one of the streakiest players in baseball. When he gets on a heater, as my colleague Kevin Acee says, there's nobody in baseball better than Manny Machado. If he can get even hotter than he is right now, if Xander Bogaerts can get past the wrist injury that he's had, I think that they can really just rocket boost this team into playoff contention. I don't know if the Padres are going to make the playoffs this year. They've played a lot of bad baseball in the first half of the season. It leads me to believe that maybe they won't. But I think that if the left side of the Padres infield can get hot, it's going to make for a really fun end of the season.
Some strong words there. Darnay, you have the final word.
Yeah, I think there's a few things. The bullpen needs to be the bullpen that we saw at the beginning of the season. Lights out. They've been a bit shaky. You've had Michael Wacha hit the IL. You've had Yu Darvish deal with a sickness of some sort. You got to get those guys back. You got to get them back on track, because if they are at the level they were pitching wise, then it's on the lineup, and that speaks to what Ryan has said. I think you want those guys to be who they are, and again, in the last week to few weeks, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth have all resembled themselves. Does that continue? But also, I mean, can you win some extra innings games? Can you win some one-run games? Do you look inspired in the process? Because there's been reason to doubt that to this point. And so I think seeing those guys play to their potential, but also show some grit, show a little bit of heart when things get tough, find ways to win. When you're in those, high leverage type spots, do you get the big hit? They've been doing that a little bit more. Again, they've been the opposite of the Marlins. They've been so bad in those close game, extra inning type situations. If they can start to flip that, play some inspired baseball, I think you see a team that could, again, climb the standings and get back into the position that we expected them to be in the beginning of the season.
And I'm sure, as you guys all said, fans are just waiting for those moments to happen. I've been speaking with Darnay Tripp from NBC7 San Diego and Ryan Finley from the San Diego Union Tribune. Both of you, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
That's going to do it for Roundtable this week. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. You can leave us a voicemail at 619-452-0228. You can also email us roundtable@kpbs.org. Don't forget to check out the Roundtable podcast if you missed any part of our show. Roundtable airs on KPBS FM at noon on Fridays and again on Sunday at 6 a.m. The show is produced by Andrew Bracken, and Rebecca Chacon is our technical director. I'm your host, Matt Hoffman. Thanks so much for being here with us, and have a great weekend.
KPBS On Demand is supported by Markel Design and Remodeling, helping homeowners with their home remodeling needs. From ADUs to kitchen remodels, room additions, and custom homes, Markel Design and Remodeling can help homeowners design and build their dream homes. More at trustyourhometous.com.